first event since, you know. All right. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yo. Hey. Hi, humans. How you doing? Y'all good? All right. Deep breath, deep breath. All right, we're here. I'm here with Melody, co-founder and CEO of Observable. Melody, welcome to CMX.
It's great to be here.
Melody, welcome to CMX.
Thanks.
All right, cool. I'm saying that 'cause this is my second time on stage. I was here pre-pandemic. It's good to be back. But for Melody, for the audience who are new to Observable, and can you describe what's Observable and how you describe our community?
It's great to be here. This is the first event in years, so I'm happy to see people in person. And I guess I'd start by describing our mission at Observable, which is to help everyone make sense of the world with data and to do that together. So a lot of what we do at Observable is focus on helping empower people to work with data. We know that data is overwhelming most of us, and one of the biggest challenges we believe facing our connected world is how we understand data that's important to us as people, as organizations, as communities. So one of the things that we've done is just built in different ways to empower people as they work with data. And our main focus for community are data practitioners. And we think of this as an inclusive way to talk about developers who are building data apps and dashboards, data analysts, data scientists, people who use spreadsheets. I mean, there are like 800 million spreadsheet users in the world. So there's a lot of data work that happens in spreadsheets. And all of these folks are very diverse in their backgrounds and their skill sets and what they're trying to do with the data. So then you sort of think about, what does that community look like? How does it feel? And community is at the heart of everything that we do at Observable. It is how people learn and teach each other about data, different analysis techniques, different ways of using visualization. It's how they're inspired. Visualization is such a creative and iterative way to work with data. So everything that we do is in service to that community. And it really is a community of creators, but it's focused on working with data. So I don't know, I would describe it as creative, for sure. Really diverse in terms of the different topics that interest people. It could be from COVID to, we just did this whole thing around the NBA Finals, to, creative art, generative art, and then a lot of work that happens privately within companies.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about your background, because, and this is a plug, but we are hiring, and if that's what we do on stage, we plug. But I've done some hiring interviews recently, and people ask, like, well, why do you join? What led me to join Observable? And I tell them three things. I said, one, the challenge of this community is, is different than some of my background and some things I've done, but it's also, like you said, creative, spreadsheet users, generative art. Two, I would say that the culture of the company. And then three, I will be you and co-founder with Mike, in terms of your leadership and your background. So can you share a little bit about your background from a former VP engineering at Google, where you were like top, like up there at Google, and where you were leading large teams, and how that experience led you to a human-first community focus at Observable?
Thank you for those kind words.
True, all true.
So my background is in software development. I was a programmer for many years, and when I started increasing kind of my responsibility for leading people to write software and develop software for really big scaling systems, I started to get really curious about how people stay productive. How do they stay productive as individuals, and how do they stay productive working together? And really found that there was this idea of staying in flow. So my favorite analogy for this is like if you watch or listen to a really good band, and you hear how the musicians kind of play off of each other. we found that if you could kind of stay in flow with your work and with other people, like your productivity skyrocketed. And that was one of my big lessons, like leading teams was trying to help find the tools and the processes and the connection for those people to stay in flow. And the second thing that really stood out to me from all of my learning was, and you might laugh at this, but it was this principle of like no grumpy humans. And the idea behind that is that working in software, working in data, it's really challenging. Like the tools break, things go wrong, like the data, what you were asking of it, it's something else. And if there was a way for you to be connected with other people and collaborate, you just had more fun and you just enjoyed your work more. So I try and bring that to the work at Observable because I think working with data, it's very challenging. The other thing that I would offer is that I think some of the most like profound changes in technology were things that helped people share code and ideas and help people reuse them. So if you think about what GitHub did or like NPM, it's this idea that you could build on each other's work. And that really inspires a lot of the work that we do at Observable, where everyone can be a creator because the platform is open. You can find an idea and you can fork it or copy it, and then you can start to play around with it yourself. And that, to me, is really powerful when you can find something that you're inspired by, and you can reach out and connect with that person, that creator that shared that. There's such like generosity in that. So for me, I think what I've learned is that any technology that we're building should be in service to what the people are trying to do. The creators, the question you're trying to ask of the data, the thing that you're trying to do with your teammate. How can we help make that easier for you? How can we make that easier for ourselves? I believe strongly that within our company, we try and use the product for almost like everything. We try and use it every day. Like we use it in our community meetings. We use it to plan our meetups. So we feel the friction of our community, and we're kind of in it together. Yeah. We use it to plan questions for this panel as well. So yeah. Thank you. From 2019, the company's not that old. And when we met in 2020, it was already that, I saw that you was a community-first CEO. And what was the driving force behind that? Like, did it come from, and you touched on experience at Google, but like, and you touched a few minutes ago, but like, any other insight, like what did you see, or what was it that, okay, from the beginning of a startup, in San Francisco to like where we are now, I think we had maybe 40, 50 employees. Yeah. What was the driving force? Like, no one be a community-first CEO. I think a lot of it has to do with just focusing on people. And when I've seen technology or teams just focus on what they want to build and be disconnected from the people that they're building it for, things go awry. And so what really interested me in this idea of creating a place for people to come together, a place for people to help teach techniques, data techniques to each other, teach ways to use visualization to learn about data. That idea to me was so inspiring because a lot of the tools that I saw in the data space they're pretty constrained and like siloed, and you kind of had to stay in your spot. What would happen if you could share what you were applying to your data in a more open way? And that was really inspiring to me. And to me, that meant collaboration, right? Like software is a team sport, working with data is a team sport. How do you help people collaborate in a more open way? And people that are doing really interesting data work in spreadsheets, that's really important. How do you connect people that are doing such diverse things? And then the pandemic hit. And like, if it wasn't clear to all of us, collaboration, it's like the price of doing any work any connection these days. And I think it has to be something that you build, that it's really built into everything that you think about. You know, I think if you look out in the market, you can see these just signs about, you know, how can we help people collaborate? How can we help people connect? And that was one thing that, again, like listening to the community and learning from the community was going to help us build a place that really was in service to what people were doing. And I, you know, like every day I look at new notebooks that are being created, like it's incredibly creative and diverse and like amazing. You know, it's just kind of awe-inspiring what people create. And then they just share it out in the world like freely for other people to build on top of. So that, you know, that really inspires me. And I guess, you know, just to come back to, it is about people. It is about creators. It's about what they want to do and how we can help them. Agreed.
I mean, thinking, as I was listening to this, I have a curveball question that we didn't prep for. Yeah. But one of the things that was different for me when I first joined Observable in 2020 was this sense of that community first. We have this platform. We have data practitioners. We have data analysts. We have, you know, developers. And we have a trending section, an explore section.
Yeah.
And I was coming from this background like social media and all that and community and the work, there was a little friction there I felt like, when I first joined. So I'm curious, like, and I had to learn to take a step back and realize that, okay, we're not going to build another social network. That wasn't the goal. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the mission of building a community. Like, it's not going to have, we're not building another Twitter. We're not building another Facebook. Yeah. Can you talk about some of that decision around why that was important for the company at that time to not go in that direction? Or even some of the values around that direction.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point, because I think if you think about a platform and you think about a place, one way that you could think about it is like, do everything there, you know? But that's not necessarily what helps people do their job or get their tasks done. There are other tools that are needed that make you productive, that you want to use. And so what we tried to do, this principle of trying to create ways for people to, you could start from scratch, right? Like you could start from a blank slate. You could also search within the platform and find another example and like copy it and get started from that. You could also use your favorite open source libraries out on the web. You could also import or reuse certain parts, just pieces of notebooks that you found. And I guess I give all those examples as a way to kind of talk about finding different ways for people on the platform to get value, because we don't know what they want to do, right? We have some idea, and we can watch, we can listen, and see what their usage is of features, but we don't know. Like, they're doing all kinds of crazy things, like visualizing algorithms, like, you know, all these things. And I really wanted us to focus on what would help them connect with each other, and then have what they needed to do their job. And that meant, like, we're not going to replicate other things that are helpful for people. We did do an integration with social media sharing that kind of came from a couple of requests in the community, but we found it wasn't really used. So it was a good idea, but people are using Twitter, they're using other social media in the way that works for them. So help them do what they need to on the platform, but don't try and be everything for everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you, and that was a great lesson for me when I first joined. I was like, don't try to do everything, right?
Yeah.
We talked about our community, and you know, this is talking about like using data for strategies and so forth to community. Can you share some examples when we made a decision that we heard using data? We heard feedback from the community. It's like, oh, the community says we want to do this, and the data, you know, to build a certain product, certain feature in the product. And then the data said they wanted it. Then can you share what happened after maybe it was launched and so forth?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing that I would say is that we use Observable. So Observable is a data collaboration platform, right? SaaS-based, you just open your browser. But we internally use it to build the platform and to pay attention to what's being used on the platform. So to me, this is all about listening to the community. You can listen to the community in terms of hearing feedback requests that come into the repo, or questions in user support, or requests that come in through, because we do community surveys, or we would do user interviews, like user research. All of these are like qualitative things that we can listen to what people want in the community. But then we also, because we're a data collaboration platform, we built and still build dashboards to look at feature usage as a way to kind of pay attention to the quantitative, like the quantitative voice of the user. And we would hear things qualitatively through all those things that I mentioned, and then we would start prototyping and try and get early feedback on that. But then we would actually have a dashboard to see if people were actually using it. Like, did they get value out of it? And we found in certain cases, like, it wasn't true. So one example of that is we heard that people wanted to collaborate in notebooks. And so we opened up limited collaboration in notebooks. You could go and invite 4 of your friends and start collaborating together. Very low usage. It just wasn't happening. But in our community survey, we heard that people were collaborating, and they did want to collaborate with more people, but it wasn't happening on the platform. So we had to figure out, like, why is that the case? Because it kind of didn't work. We had a request for public comments, so you could comment on someone else's work on the platform. Creators wanted this because they wanted to get feedback, or they wanted to have ways to talk with people that were using or being inspired by their work. And we launched it, and then we started looking at the data, and the insight was actually all this kind of social human dynamic of, like, like, when you say something, you want to be pretty confident about what you're saying in public, and you want to be respectful, and you think about the relationships that you have. And people felt more comfortable saying those things in private, in like a one-on-one situation. So that was another example of, like, okay, like, in theory, it creates connection, but in practical sense, it doesn't. Social sharing is another example of that. Another example I would give was we had a request for, we had an idea that some of the features that we'd heard from the community, they weren't discoverable. Like, you just couldn't find them. And so we started to change, like, how you would work on the platform. And we have an ambassador program, which is awesome. Our ambassadors were like, don't do this. This is, I'm being dramatic, but, like, we know how to use the product. Like, if you do this, it's going to completely screw up. Like, we do not want you to do this. And so we kept prototype, we kept talking to them, and we're like, okay, we're going to take this risk because we think people can't find these features, and we need to make it easier for new users. And so we launched it, and we actually found out that particularly new creators were using these features because they were right there. They were, like, right at your fingertips. They weren't kind of off to the side. Ambassadors knew they were off to the side, but people don't have time. They're under deadlines. So that was one where it's like, oh, then the data showed that actually this was a big help, and the ambassadors came around to it. So, I think the big takeaway for me is listen to users, listen to all those support requests and feature requests, and look at the data, because the data is going to tell you, especially at scale, if people are using it. And I think people using it is a really good indicator that you're on the right track, that you're delivering for them. And it's not just for features. I think it's the same thing for our community programs in terms of meetups, different educational workshops that we do.
No, agree. And I think that's a rare example where it's like, I heard an example earlier today about, yes, you let the community know, your ambassadors know ahead of time, and they may disagree, but still, you gave them a choice. You communicate them because they part of the program. They want to feel like they have the early release or that so forth.
Yeah.
And we didn't just like ignore them. We was
Right.
like, oh, okay, maybe we just release a little later, you know?
Yeah.
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 Awesome. Change the topic a little bit. On the community team, we have myself.
Yeah.
And we recently hired 2 community managers, Hannah and Courtney. Courtney is a community manager for EDU. And you always, from the beginning, have said that you're the 4th member of the community team.
Yeah.
And you join our meetups, you participate in the ambassador program. Why is it important for the community to know that the CEO is part of the community team and supportive and so forth? Why, from your perspective?
I don't know. Like, I don't know another way a little bit, because I feel like if you're trying to build something and our mission is, like, it's big, like helping people of very different backgrounds work with data and work with data together and work with data maybe in a way that they haven't before, you have to listen. And I think I want everyone at the company to listen. You know, I just talk about like listening through our users' words and what they're saying in all these different ways, and listen to what the data is telling us about what they're doing. I wanted to find ways for us to listen, and I want us to do it. And I always want to listen. So I've learned in community meetups, by listening to what our community creators say, I've learned some really important pieces of feedback that have led to different prioritization that we have for what we're building. With the ambassador program, these really interesting discussions, because in some ways they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And it's really important to know that, to be informed by that. And I'm a big believer that you can do all this product and platform work to help people. You also need programs. You need ways for people to communicate with each other. You need ways for people to connect. I love like demo days and show and tells where creators on Observable are showing what they've built to the community and telling like, this was horrible, like on the platform, like, you know, this really didn't work and this was really great. Well, that's so good to know. That's like, it's such a gift to get that feedback. So for me, I will always be part of the community team, because the community is what has given Observable the largest, you know, library of data visualizations, I think, anywhere. Like, the community did that. We didn't do that as a company. We were in service to it. So the platform work has to happen, but the programs are so important because people need different things. They need different tutorials, different education, different ways to connect. And that's really important investment to make in the community, in users.
Yeah, no, agreed. And thank you. And I think this is a good spot to do another shameless plug while we have the stage. Speaking of the largest community of data practitioners in the world, on Observable, that feels good to say, if I say. We are hosting our first user conference. Yep. October 26th, 27th is going to be virtual, Observable Insights. And there's a lot we're planning to do with that, right? And before I get in this question, if anyone has a question, we're going to take questions about 2-3 minutes. And so feel free to get ready if you have a question. But while we do the conference and get ready for everything, we were planning, we launched a new feature called Free Teams. Yeah. Which allows everyone to collaborate in data open and easily. It was a big platform shift for us. What were some of the insights in the data that led to, and I think you alluded to it, but what were some of the insights in data, and how did we collect the data? And you talk about dog food, that led to make that big platform shift.
Yeah, this was one where we had an idea, it was like a year ago. Like, we heard from our community survey, people wanted more ways to collaborate. So we add this feature, and we knew collaboration was happening in kind of small groups. We launched it. And then we had the dashboard, right? We do what's called landing reviews, like 1 or 2 or 3 months after something has been released to the community to kind of check in on how it's going. And we saw that it wasn't happening. And we kept hearing from the community, we want more ways to collaborate. We want to work on projects together. We don't want restrictions in terms of how we do that. Restrictions on the topic, restrictions on who can participate. And so we're like, okay, like, what can we do to change this? We have a free platform. We also have 2 paid tiers. We have a Teams tier and an Enterprise tier. And we heard consistently from our customers on our paid tiers that they were getting insights faster together, right? Because they were working in this kind of private environment, and there were no limits to collaboration. Who could participate, who could comment. And so we're like, okay, what if we just get rid of this way of collaborating being limited to just these private spaces? And we launched free teams, so anyone can go to Observable, create a team on a whole range of topics. So if you think about the NBA Data Jam for the finals, which we both love the Warriors. Anyone can come and just connect with other people on a whole range of topics. No limits to who can participate, skill sets, geography, and it's been really interesting to see topics that people care about in the world, fun things that people are doing. You just create a team, invite people to it, and you start riffing. We've also had a lot of data sets to inspire people, public data sets, so you can get started and work with each other. But a lot of people already have data. They have a CSV. They have data from a spreadsheet that they can just start working on together. And it's been really fun to see what people do.
Yeah, agreed.
But that was one case where it's like, okay, we limited it. You could have it in private, but why do that? Just let people, help people collaborate.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions? I believe I have a mic there. And if not, I will continue. Any questions from the audience? 5, 4, 3, 2.
Oh,
yeah,
hand up. The free teams?
Can you,
Platform comes at us for a fee, correct? But then all that other community thing, is there any kind of barrier to entry that costs the creative something?
It's free. Maybe if you want to repeat for other folks.
I was just asking about financials and keeping that community open, but also who funds that? Is there a cost to it?
So great question. The platform is free. Anyone can go and start an account and start working with other people out in the open. We do have 2 paid tiers. I mean, most people that are using the platform, once they start using it, we see that they want to use it for their day job. So, I think in terms of being a, software as a service platform, I think it's really important that people try your platform before they decide whether or not it's going to help them with their job. And so we have trials, but we also have our free platform. And, this example of the free team, it's not, the cost difference when you look at it is not significant. So I think really, the customers that come and pay us for our teams and our enterprise product, they come because they're either have already been part of the community or they're inspired by the examples and those starting points that they see from the community. So to me, it's, it is about being a platform and not just a kind of closed product.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the question. One more in the back.
Hi. So you've said that your community has built the largest library of data visualizations. How do you recognize your top contributors, and do you do anything to recognize your new contributors?
Awesome. Great question.
You want me to go? You want to go?
I can go. You can
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Good question. Great question. So we, as Melody mentioned, we have the ambassador program that when we see that they are some of our top contributors, that we invite them to the program where they get, of course, the word swag has been thrown out, but we provide swag, we product releases ahead of time, and we do our best to try to understand their needs. Whether they're looking for opportunities to collaborate in the community or speak or try to understand what their needs are, and we try to highlight them as well. We recently launched a series called Ambassador Stories, so we are interviewing them and sharing them out in the community and so forth. Did I leave anything out?
I mean, we're doing some co-sponsoring of events and meetups to support them. And your other part of your question about new creators, we are really trying to pay attention, again, looking at the data of people that are new in their journey. There's a couple of creators that they learned how to do data viz initially on Observable and are now doing it as their job, either freelance or working at a company. And again, I think the Ambassador Story Program is a great example of that, of amplifying and really just it's their work, it's what they've done, and they are the ones that are inspiring the next generation of people coming to data and data viz.
Awesome, thank you for the question. Out of time, I want to just wrap up. Last question, Melody, is if the audience could walk away with one key lesson from how to use data and insights to build sustainable community, what would it be?
It would be to put the time in to understand quantitatively, usage specifically, what the community is doing. Especially as you're scaling a community, it's really important to listen to the data. And if you, in your community programs, can look at that and ask questions of your data, you're going to find those surprises or those ahas. You're like, oh, we should go do a program here. Or we should give feedback to the platform team that we need to build this. But I think being in that advocate role for the community, really being close to the data is such an important part of, I think, growing, supporting, and scaling communities.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Melody. Thank you all. And
thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the CMX.